good.
Horses are terrifying.
I'm just moved on. I worked at Outdoor Afro as a chief program officer, and our goal is to inspire and reconnect Black people in nature. And when we get 47,000 people out in the country, we tend to take them on hiking, backpacking trips, as well as kayaking, ice fishing, fly fishing, skiing, you name it. And we're based in Oakland, and so the East Bay Regional Parks are our backyard.
Hi, I'm Michael Gregory. I'm in San Leandro, but I grew up in the Grass Valley area of the Oakland Hills. Used the parks as my backyard forever. Like Mary, I'm a multi-use user, absent the horses, but I do see them and work with them pretty regularly. But the issues are very clear. There's going to be increased use and not enough trails. So as a hiker, I see the points clearly. You zone out when you start hiking. And then when you're interrupted with a bike screaming past you, that's a big problem. Ordinance 38 is our map for how we should be using the parks. I'd like to see that amplified more somehow for trail users of all kinds to learn what trail etiquette is and can be. Access to parks is a big issue. And so I look to biking and other solutions to get people into the parks, as well as how to use them correctly. So I don't know how we're going to roll this all up. It's going to be a lot of agreement here, probably. But let's kick it around.
There's something that someone mentioned the other day that we don't hear much about is the concept of sharing the parks, and I kind of think we might need a campaign on that, because kind of like don't be a litter bug. There hasn't been something very visible. People just go to the park and then they're surprised there are other people there. Maybe we need to sort of get that out there a little more, and how to share.
Well, Ordinance 38 is the governing body for the district. It's updated regularly. We at the PAC, I consider us a pre-digestion of board issues that we then pass up to the board, and we treat many of the issues the same, or we work them over before the board will hear them. It's a very interesting group. Anyway, you're right. But we talk about things like the poop fairy campaign and things like that to get dog users to really recognize that so many users are not aware of etiquette. And frankly, you pack it in with your dog, you take it out. Don't just leave it on the side thinking that someone else will pick it up, because that just doesn't happen, as we know. So with horses, I don't know. We don't have any equestrians in this work group, but that's a pretty hard group to, they impact as well. But we can get along, I'm sure. I'm interested in maybe the district setting up some site visits to some of these model trails, multi-use trails that we've heard about, because that would
absolutely be helpful. Yeah, that would be really great. I'm very curious about those two that got mentioned. Samuel Taylor and where?
Fernandez, somewhere I thought was
Pinole. Rancho Pinole.
Yeah. You're heading out there now. But you can't beat Samuel Taylor for anything.
So we just got a message from Amanda. What do you think would improve trail user experience? I guess we're already doing that, right? That little discussion.
Yeah, I posted the 3 questions that I guess were sort of the prompts in the chat. So the first one is, what are some of the goals that hikers have in using trails? What are some of the issues that hikers experience and or create on trails? And what do you think would improve the trail user experience?
Well, we need to start making society more civil. Maybe we should start at the Park District and work all the way up to the White House. Caring, civility, respect.
Well, other cultures also have things to share with us if we're willing to look at them. I spent 3 years abroad in Germany, where it's just German culture. Whether you're hiking around city parks in the Alps, it doesn't really matter what part of Germany. But you typically will greet people as part of when you're hiking, getting to each other. You'll acknowledge each other, eye to eye contact. What a concept, right? But you
Yeah.
also do more than acknowledging. You'll greet each other. It's just a very common practice. It's part of the culture. And I come here and I live here. I'm a Californian Oaklander, and I wonder, to your point, yes, that could be something we could do at the Park District. Absolutely. We need a campaign. And then you get the worst case scenarios within the district. You've got Mission Peak, where it just is overrun with love and people wanting to walk it and love it to death. And now we have to simply do alternate days probably for people. So yeah, things can get out of control as well. But at the very least, you're right. I think civility is a good starting point.
I know the NICA group, the cycling association that Austin is involved with. I know at one point they had the Spirit of Howdy campaign. So for their students who are riding to just say howdy to each other on the trails. So
within the biking community, I dabble there, but I'm not a huge road rider. But there's basically almost two. I'm being extremely broad here, but there's the people that will acknowledge each other, and then there's the other people. Well, no, I'm doing my personal best. I have no time for you. You're in my way. So you've got those people, I think, in the Park District, and we haven't even talked about those people because there's plenty of those too, or triathletes that are always doing their personal best. And you're in my way, get out of my way, and they're treated, and they see things differently. That would be a lack of civility, I guess. I don't know if you'll know the Oakland Aquatic Center. I'm back to access at Estuary Park. Are you familiar with that site? They went out of business, but it was put together, and one of their missions was to introduce to people who do not have access to parks. And in this case, it's water. How do you access water and do water activities if you can't swim? So they built into their original mission to teach kids in particular how to swim, get them out to pools. And then you train them. Somebody mentioned the mountain bikers. Well, yeah, you train them at a young age, they'll know and embrace these things going forward. But boy, Brian, you've seen it all. What would you say?
Well, I'm interested in hearing from Joseph and your organization, particularly for either new park users of color. What sort of experiences make people feel safe and welcomed in the outdoors. I'll just share a little anecdote that when initially we started talking about having this trail user group, and I talked to our multicultural advisory committee, and I'm so into the hiker biker conflict, and because that's what we hear all the time. And I went and talked to that group, and a young woman just shared that sometimes when I go up to a kettle gate, I don't know if I'm allowed to open it and go into that area. So just a sign saying that I'm welcome to continue on to that trail would be helpful. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so easy. Like we're trying to solve, these big problems here. And there's probably some really easy, low hanging fruit things that we could do to make people feel safe and welcome on our trails. So just interested in your perspective.
$1 a sign, $1 a sign on that metal gate. We'll fundraise for you, Brian.
So thanks for the opportunity, Brian. Yeah, I would say some of the challenges we face outside of the maintenance-related issues I was talking about earlier were not, I'd say, occasionally when there are groups of 10 or 15 Black people hiking, mostly women, by the way, non-Black groups or people tend to comment in the best case scenario, worst case scenario, offend, throw things, say you're not supposed to be here, stuff like that. And then it kind of spoils the day when those events happen, and then we don't really know how to get that enforced. Like, so I'm sure there's a rule, and this gets back to what Mary's talking about with civility. But what happens if someone is uncivil? There's not going to be enough park rangers around, but what is the reporting mechanism for violations of rules? So that would be helpful to know. The other thing that I'm actually working on is with one of our tech companies doing a better job of tracking how many people are in the park at what time of day, who they are, what are they doing, to see if we can start doing some studies, longitudinal studies, to understand how parks are already being used. And then I think that would inform us. And then lastly, I'll say, when I've talked to other folks in other parts of the country, they don't seem to have the equestrian, dog, cycle, hiking, even young children off leash issue. They do a better job at segregating park hours for specific use. So it could be a trail that's multi-use, but cyclists are on at these hours, hikers are on at those hours, different days of the week. And that's how I think folks in Colorado seem to be getting along. Where when I mentioned this to them, they were almost laughing, and these weren't the marijuana users either. They were sober and just kind of confused. Like, why can't you Californians get along? You got a lot of space out there.
That's the question, isn't it?
So I'll just share one of the, you mentioned trying to better understand how to track who is using the parks. Yeah, that's one of the perpetual questions that we have, in the survey that Lisa posted shared a lot of that, but that's something that I think, something that we're definitely looking at, trying to actually go out and start doing some of those intercept studies and really understanding, who are using the parks, where they're coming from, what they're using them for. So that's an area we need more data for sure.
Well, so Brian, I can partner with you on that, because right now we want it to be real time. So I know a survey is really helpful. I enjoy perusing that. But imagine when you walk in, you can look at your phone and you can get a sense, just like you do in parking facilities. How many cars are here? Which level should you go to the park, right? Imagine if you had an app where you can walk in and see, oh, there are this many people who identified as hikers, as equestrians, as dog walkers, have families or backpackers, have kids, right? And they're in this area, they're in that area. So you see a heat map of the park you're walking into real time, and you have a sense of who's doing what. That also could dovetail nicely into the civility piece, but also in the enforcement piece. If somebody's misbehaving, we'll have better ways of identifying them. And now some people will push back, this is too big brotherish. I get that, you want to go into nature and forget technology. So I think we'll have to find a common ground, but I would like to try.
Has anyone done that anywhere?
Not to my knowledge. And it's a Herculean task, which is probably why, and you need a multi-billion-dollar multinational to fund this kind of idea. I mean, even if you can buy jackets now, so if you get lost, the RF frequency goes off and you can get back, right? We could do the same thing, but have a chip in our little thing we have on our keys or whatever, and we already let them know who we are, our demographic, our age, what activities we're doing, and then it just happens as we walk through this invisible gate.
So you'd have to opt in. It's not like a cell phone tracker.
You have to opt in, but you can also make it fun that there's an incentive to opt in, similar to blood donations and DMV.
Didn't you just say fun? Blood donations and DMV?
I was just talking about. Sorry.
Hey, hang on. I'm a retired blood banker, and thank you for bringing up blood donation.
The point I was making is when the study was done as to how certain countries got more people to donate, and you made it default yes, not a default no. And it was as simple as that. And then the results went up 60, 70%. Right?
Wow.
We just need an incentive. And seatbelts. How did we start wearing seatbelts when people didn't want to wear seatbelts, right? So we have models to borrow from to get people to change or track behavior that will give us the data we need to better manage the parks.
Could you do it without that opt-in? Could you just do it with heat tracking?
First, I would like to do the opt-in because, to your point, let's ask people. Let's try to be more civil. Let's find out if you're not going to opt in, and tell us why. You know, what are you hiding? Are you making mess over here? You know, what?
Yeah, you know, I'm surprised we haven't talked about mask use in parks yet, but we have this joke when we go out on hikes on different trails. We see on some trails, we see higher mask use, and some trails less. It's just kind of a joke around our house, but same thing.
Yeah, I was just going to share, I was just up in Yosemite last weekend, and, you know, sort of national park. And the difference I thought between, you know, what I've seen in the Bay Area and our regional parks here versus being in a national park was, yeah, it was pretty amazing. You know, masks were not ubiquitous by any means. It was just like, you know, by somehow, even though I was still in California, by somehow being in a national park, I was in anywhere USA. So, yeah.
I'm just trying to be a good student. So what do you think would improve trail users? We talked about that. What are some of the issues that hikers experience? And what are some of the goals? And Brian, were you the scribe for this session?
I have been scribing, so so you can rely on some of my notes, so that's fine.
Well, if you take what Norman was saying as the experience being therapeutic and calming, and we all agree on that, and then you introduce every other thing that we're talking about here, you're only going to have conflict, and because anything will destroy that state of bliss, let's say. I see it myself when I walk my dog. I'm in a whole different zone than when I'm biking. But I'd like to say I'm a recovering asshole bike rider too, because when mountain biking started, I was in my 30s, and it was just a chance to be a little boy again at all costs, meaning disregarding anyone else's safety or enjoyment at the park. So it took me a decade to come around, and also a couple of dogs.
So Michael, if you were in other parts of the country where they gave you an appointment for that trail, you could have been an asshole with other assholes and nobody would have known you were an asshole.
True. Yeah.
Right. So that's just about sectioning it off again. And sure, people are going to complain, I don't want Wednesdays at 9.
Well,
but
no, it's a good idea, but why can't we try it in a place that needs some help and try it as a pilot? I mean, the district does pilots regularly. We're piloting use of e-bikes.
Yep.
And it's not good. I was hoping for a better outcome, but it's just not good. So we have to continue looking at that and study it. But you're absolutely right. It's something, you know, Brian, have we segregated severely in the past? The answer is probably no.
No, we have not. And that's been one of those sort of, you know, operational types of things that, you know, we thought, well, maybe we should explore that. I really don't think that idea has even been really breached or discussed with our board, because we haven't just been able to get over the hump of mountain biking bad, hiking good sort of thing.
I was in a meeting in Sacramento not too long ago, and I asked the question, why do we have 58 counties? And you know, just like, why not 59 or why not 3? And boy, it was almost like I invited Lucifer in the meeting. People wanted to, we like our 58 counties. So people are locked in for whatever reason to certain things.
Yeah. So
Well, go ahead, Mary.
I was just going to say that there are some parks where almost nothing happens except what Norman's talking about, like the botanical parks. I wonder if there's anything we can learn from them. And I don't know what there might be, but maybe.
Well, that's another thing. So some have suggested, whether in support or not, that the trails that have been developed at Crockett Hills have resulted in a sort of de facto mountain bike park that hikers and equestrians just don't use that anymore. And some folks have said, well, maybe that's okay. You know, that a park that's dedicated to mountain bike users, and we have other parks that are dedicated to hikers. So, you know, that could be one too. Or, you know, Crockett, you could say, well, you know, there's no bikes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the equestrians can use it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You know, there's those types of things too.
The problem is we have the burden of knowing what happens. You know, we know that unrestrained motorcycle use of hills in Richmond and where's that Tesla area have just degraded those hills. So we need regulation. But it's just worth a try. I don't know where we would start. Ryan, I'm sure the district has a good idea for even attempt classification of trails and how to use them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would love to get there and try to have that conversation. And frankly, I think it's something that, you know, our board needs to provide some resources for. You know, we've always said, well, if we would have done a trails master plan like 5 years ago that looked at all this sort of stuff, like we would be much farther along right now.
Yeah.
Instead of battling over this land use plan at this place or this land use plan at that place and this little trail here or there. So I think that's a direction that I think we want to continue to advocate for. And I think all of these things would be on the table for that. Would be looking at, you know, whether it's dedicated use or split days or, you know, anything along those lines. And then we could, you know, once we resolve some of those issues, then we could really sort of free up a lot of our energy to, like I say, pursue what we deal with on the back end, which is working with the resource agencies and working with the, you know, the permitting to move these things forward. And then, you know, even then almost having some capacity to actually start addressing, you know, the illicit trails and doing better enforcement and management. So, so I think that's, you know, we've got some ideas there. And it's just, you know, like lots of things, I think the concern has been just that when it gets hard and it gets controversial, nothing happens, you know. So I think that's just, that's been kind of the, you know, it's been the sort of kick the can down the road type of experience at the Park District for a while. And we've been really focused on, you know, buying a bunch of land. I mean, we've been doing a lot of other things too, you know, so.
True. It's really hard. What if you were to say Tuesdays and Thursdays the mountain bikers use X park? There's really no way to enforce that, and the 10% of people who don't are going to totally tick off every other user, and then you're back into this.
Well,
You know.
Mary, I would push back a little on that. I think that's where the rubber meets the road with enforcement, if we were to do something like this. And so, Brian, I would just say, what are the resources for responding to complaints? And can we issue tickets or citations? You know, just,
Yeah.
I mean, civility, sometimes it has to, you know, people respond to negative reinforcement sometimes better than positive. And if they know they're going to get caught and they know their family name may get damaged if we published it, this Jones character is always on their bike during hiking day in Marin County, they'll stop doing it.
There are also
Yeah.
spike strips. Don't forget spike strips. Those are very useful. Just put them right. Tuesdays and Thursdays, spike strips.
Okay, so I think we're going back to the main room here.
Oh, we're being summoned.
Yeah,
Oh
but
my.
thanks all. That was a good discussion. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for being the
I'll
scribe.
just say,
and the
actually, we've
recorder.
got 50 more seconds, so I just wanted to respond to what Joseph said. We do have more resources than probably any other park agency in to enforce rules, but I think as Mary will certainly support, you know, enforcing rules, like whether it's off-leash dogs or mountain bikes on trails is, you know, is challenging. And it's, you know, one of those things that people have to be there when it's happening. So,
Yeah.
you know, sort of calling in afterwards is, so it's just, you know, it's always, you know, education is preferable to enforcement, but, And it's ultimately, yeah, getting us all on the same page that, this is what should be done in these areas. But enforcement will, always be a challenge, and that's where we'll always get critiqued on, because we're not there catching them right when it's happening.
That's when we circle back to that civility camp.
Experience where they don't have, they're going away from their urban experience, so they want to be able to have a place of peace and quiet in a cliche, commune with nature. And that there can be issues with conflicts with
Well, let's just hold it there and just, I mean,
Okay.
let's jump into the next question, I think.
Okay, that's fine.
Those are a good list, and maybe we'll move on with Luana. And maybe one way to make it simple, Norm did a pretty good job, I think, of summarizing it. Are there anything beyond what Norm said, or do you concur with everything he listed? And can we add to the list?
Sure, I can add. And I'm coming from a hiker runner. So when I hit the trails, I'm looking for a good time with friends, adventure. Vert. A lot of times I'm looking to get a certain amount of vert in. And
I'm
that's
sorry, a certain
elsewhere.
amount of what you're saying?
Vert. So
Oh, vert, like climbing.
yeah,
Vertical.
elevation. So
Yeah.
training. So that's what
Training.
it's training for
Exercise, yeah.
Instagrammable spots. Like, there's some spots that we love and we want to get a post from. And for me, it's more social connection, and those larger adventures. So even though we enjoy solitude, it's definitely, I think us runners out there, we're a little louder.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm just typing down these as sort of a bullet list and getting a good list going here. And maybe Lou, you can keep us on time track and give us equal amount of time around. That'd be great. So Civic Corps, what are your guys' names and how do you want to add to it?
So I'm Gabriela. Yeah. So from my experience personally talking, I think people go hiking to disconnect from the chaos from urban development or whatever, and to reconnect to their roots, because we are nature, we're part of nature. And I think that's what I do, and specifically. And my experience, to create experiences for myself, to basically find solutions to my regular everyday life. And what do I think? What can improve? What's the third one?
What are some issues that you could?
Oh no, we'll come back around to that. So that's great. What did you want to add anything else to the first question? I'm sorry, I didn't capture your name.
Antoine.
Okay.
For the first one, I'm gonna say, like Luna said, just like Instagrammable. Like I love being outside. I'm an outside person, so I love filming what I'm doing outside. So I love to be, I'm at Regional Park Redwood, or I'm at so and so. Like just being outside, it gives you a warm feeling. You feel me, that you can't get from being inside somewhere. Like being outside is more, you're close to home. It feels more connection to you. For me.
Okay.
So that's my little take on it.
Cool. Gary, let's go to you.
Hi, Austin. Well, one thing I appreciate in a hike is some challenge, particularly like opportunities for scrambling. And we don't get much of that in the parks, but one great hike that exemplifies that is in Mount Diablo State Park, the route from Devil's Elbow up to the North Peak. That involves some pretty steep, interesting stuff. So that challenge and views are the big deal for me.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good list. Okay. Well, we only got about a minute or so left on this question. So Sean, were you just listening in, or are you going to contribute to this as a staff person? So,
Nope. I want to hear.
Okay,
I want to hear from you guys. Yep.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'll round out the list that I agree with all these. I think they're all excellent suggestions. Trying to think of something that's unique that hasn't already been said, but I think it's related. I like to see how the seasons change in the natural environment, right? And the streams and colors and such, and just so it helps me when I'm hiking on the local parks realize that our community is part of a larger sort of system, biological system, and on a planet that has a season cyclical process to it, and you can see that with the wildlife and so that. But everything else there I think is really cool. So okay, I've got a good bullet list there. Let's go to the second question. What are some of the issues that hikers experience and or create on the trails? Maybe we can just go in reverse order and start with you again, Gary.
I'm drawing a blank on that one. I don't have very many issues with hikers at all.
None that you experience when you're hiking?
Nope.
And that's great. If I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Nope.
Okay, well let's move on and we'll see.
I just want to say to the group that I think that you can look at this in a few different ways. Issues like between hikers or with other user group, or you can look at what issues as far as like physical things that happen to the parks or
Sure.
erosion, anything, just to feel it's an open book. So don't hold yourself back.
I have an issue.
Yeah, Gabriella.
I think when I personally go to like parks or whatever, and I see like park service people, whatever, I feel intimidated instead of feeling welcome. And I feel like a lot of other maybe diverse minority communities feel like that when they go visit those places, because I feel like instead of them approaching us, we have to go approach them. And then instead of them making us feel like welcome with like better signs or something like that, more educational, I want to say signs, or now that COVID's like happening, like everything's shut down. So like you want to go out in nature, but you feel intimidated because like, oh my God, am I okay to be here now?
Yeah.
Or are they going to tell me to leave? Or is it closed? Is it everything closed? Like it's not very clear.
Yeah.
Okay. More information, signage, a welcoming environment.
Yeah.
And then specifically, just to follow up, you said intimidation from other users. I mean, like, explain that a little more. Like, what, people saying things to you, or just sort of giving you looks, or what is it?
Mostly like park service people. It's like, yeah, people and public people too. Because I guess I've heard there was a situation at Coyote Hills where this lady was walking with her kids, and this man just basically flashed the woman, and there was no park visitor centers to like for her to go around to and like have her help, like.
Oh, so a lack of staff there to be really helpful.
Yeah, like right now the visitor centers are closed. You have nowhere to find help quickly or whatever. But and it's broad daylight too, and I think visitor centers should be open.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Austin, one comment there.
Yeah, Gary.
And to Sean, it would be great if everybody knew of an online way to use their smartphone to report an incident.
Yeah.
Or more park rangers too, no?
Yeah, park rangers.
So I'll put that under the third question. What do you think would improve trail user experiences? Maybe more ways to contact staff, report issues. Okay.
Great.
Cool. Well, let's keep moving along, and we'll come around. Did you have anything to add there in the Civic Corps room?
I think we covered it.
All right. Luana, what do you think? What are some of the issues you've experienced?
So some of these were mentioned by Morris, but definitely water faucet closure in the East Bay parks. Like I tend to know when they close But just as far as, I think it can be shocking for a lot of other newer hikers.
Right.
So kind of that awareness of how you should pack into the park and water and everything else. Then just as far as, I was surprised people don't have dog issues over the year. And this might be because I was running versus walking. So sometimes I hike, sometimes I run, but I've been chased many times at Skyline. So this is out of the Skyline Gate at Redwood.
Yeah.
I think just as far as definitely bike etiquette, and this is more bike etiquette on paved trails. And this is more in areas like Coyote Hills. I think some of this is because there's a large group of new users. So just, I think some type of way, and then of hikers too. So just some way to reinforce hiking etiquette among all groups in a way that doesn't single out, the bikers or hikers. But I definitely think that COVID has changed the norm. And so the other issues I think is just like the new usership with COVID. And how do we manage usage, and what are some more creative usages? So those are just like things that I think are issues, but especially as a runner, then as a hiker, those are like my three main concerns. But I do like what you guys mentioned about reporting, having some type of app to be able to report if something happens. Because I started carrying an InReach just because now I'm doing a lot more stuff alone. And I tend to have the phone numbers of the park in my phone. And I'm realizing that like most people probably don't have that, or like, what's your UTM coordinates if you need to find me. So I think that was something that, how do we use like technology as a hiker to be safer? So that's a great concern.
Okay, cool. Let's move on. Go back to Norm. What are some of the issues hikers experience and or create on the trails?
I'll be real quick. I think one of the issues is in some parks is overcapacity, because people go on a hike to want to be away. No offense to everybody here, be away from people.
Right.
And you don't want to go there where you're just mobbed by people. I know that's particularly a problem with the National John Muir, where if you try to get there, it's just it's like you're going down the street in San Francisco, well, before COVID. So that's an issue. I think in terms of user conflicts, I've mentioned those. I think with the off-leash dog activities, that's not been a problem. I think people have said where there's a lot of conflict. The problem is where there is, the conflict is not so much with the dog, but with the dog owner, who gets very mad. And I know personally, I don't ever say anything to somebody who has their off-leash dog in a wrong spot or has encountered something, because I just don't want to get chewed out and screamed at or worse. I mean, there have been reports of violence. I mean, it gets pretty crazy. Okay, that's minimal, but it's there. I think another issue is the accessibility of the trails. Again, one Luana mentioned about water, toilets, and also the need to always be on the lookout in particular areas for poison oak, because that can be a major issue on some of the trails. But that's kind of like a minor issue. But those are kind of some of the accessibility issues I think that people are concerned about as hikers.
Yeah. Yeah, poison oak's pretty bad at certain times of years. That's just sort of the case. But okay, I would agree. One thing I didn't hear, one of the issues that I have is as hikers that wear earbuds, earphones.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And I ring my bell, I call out, and then I'm basically on them, and they act startled, like I'm doing something wrong. And I'm like, hey, I've been calling out for the last 5 minutes type thing. And, so again, it gets a lot of that, I think, is the new users on the trail. And they're like right in the middle of the trail, walking with the headphones on. It's like, come on, people, share the trail. So it's just a lack of awareness of what's going on the trail around them is a big issue. The number of left dog poop bags that are just sitting on the side of the trail, I find really frustrating. I'm not sure if those people are picking them up when they come back, but it doesn't seem to always be the case. They think it's just going to mysteriously disappear off the trail, or some poor staff person's going to come and clean them up. That's not cool. And on occasion, I've got problems with other cyclists that I don't think are being respectful of anyone. And it frustrates me as a responsible cyclist, because I get the stink eye from people that look at me when I'm riding on the trail and I'm doing everything right. And I'm like, what, just because I'm here, you don't like me? So, it's sort of a lack of awareness from all users. The other thing is I see, and this may not be applied to hikers as much, and it's definitely during COVID, around some of the more popular trailheads, there's just, to Norm's point, there's so many people coming out that the parking situation is out of control. And I ride my bike to and from the parks. And I see people that drive, and like Skyline Gate, people are just parking in a reckless and dangerous way that I think is bad for everyone. That's true up in Inspiration Point. I'm seeing that a lot. And so those are my additions. I don't see that many horses out, they're just like a smaller number of total users, but I do see fairly often, especially in Tilden where there's some stables nearby. But I am concerned that and I take extreme caution whenever I see a horse. Stop, engage, make sure they're okay with me passing, get off the bike, take my glasses off, whatever. But there are a number of horse riders who maybe they're new to the horse, they're on and it just scares me. I'm like, you're on a very large animal that's sometimes uncontrollable, and you're taking it out into a mixed use environment. And now it's our fault if something happens. It's a dangerous situation. And so it's just, I'm not pointing fingers at them as much, but just acknowledging that it's a lot riskier. My bike doesn't buck up, or if you're hiking, it doesn't throw you off the trail as like another animal. So something that needs to be thought about. So with the few minutes we have left, I think we're out at 12:30. We want to make sure we covered what do you think would improve trail user experience. And so I heard more ways to contact staff, report issues. I think the corollary to what we've just said is people being more aware of their presence on the trails, being cognizant of other users, paying attention to what's going on around them. Those would be all appropriate to state here. Having more facilities maybe open, I've heard, knowing where there's water fountains, better signage, or more easy to read maps where some of these water facilities may be, or other features. Is there anything else that we think we could add to what do you think would improve trail user experience?
I think what Civicors had mentioned, and if I misspeak, please correct me, is having park rangers and staff just be more hospitable to different groups. And then also the use of technology, having more type of integrative apps so people feel safer in the park or have access to different materials. And one thing that you mentioned, Austin, that improves my experience, I love any biker who has a bell, because I can hear the bell. I can't hear your voice unless you're almost on top of me, and then I have time to react to a bell. So is there any way to make bells, like, I don't know if that's controversial or not, but to encourage bell use within the East Bay Regional
I mean,
Park?
technically, my understanding that it is actually, if not a rule, it's definitely encouraged, and there's things that we could do more of. I think making bells available at certain places, or giving them away, or things like that. But I mean, I've always pushed the industry to sell a bike with a bell on it. Like,
I love the bell.
But
it's not a rule, but it's encouraged in etiquette to ring or call out when passing. But again, that That's a really good suggestion, right? We do give out bike bills on, they're called Share the Trail Days on paved trails and things, and they give out bike bills. But, you know, if you're riding, I don't see why it couldn't be this group's role to suggest that making bells a necessary thing you need to do if you're riding a bike, etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would just add,
Yeah, Norm.
yeah, just add I think there's the issue of overcapacity, because you can go on, and it's really different, very few, not all parks, of course, because they're not all as accessible, but when you want to try to get away and you're on a trail where it's just coming and going with people, it's nice, like to see people, but it's not the kind of experience that you may be looking for. So I don't know how you can do that. I don't have any solution.
Yeah, I think that's
Build more trails.
Well, I mean, part of it's build more trails in some places, but also educating people. Like, I'm always shocked in Tilden, you see people jogging on Wildcat Road, and I'm like, you know what? There's a nice single track 20 feet down there. I can't ride on it, but you sure could be hiking on it. Yeah. And maybe they just don't know it's there. And so how do we increase awareness of the existing trail network? Same thing in Redwood Park. People are walking on East Ridge and West Ridge, and there's tons of great trails in the middle of the canyon, and they complain about bikers on the fire roads. Well, that's the only place you can go.
It's like go on French or something.
Right, right. And
but so I think you're bringing up like a great point there, is like that connectivity of the trail, and how I think Morris mentioned the signs, because for the longest time, I didn't know there was that East Bay Mudland until I hiked the Bay Area Ridge Trail right behind my house where Dinosaur Ridge is, that like literally like connected into the top of Chabot Park. So I think it's less, you just don't know sometimes, unless you're using like a higher level trail apps, or you have more experience with actually reading a map to see how those connect. Or sometimes you might see the roads connecting, but you don't know, like, is it truly a public road, or is it safe, or like kind of, so it would be nice to highlight some safe routes, like these are safe connecting routes, and these are ones like we think if hikers are going to utilize, like they should.
Those are all good suggestions. So I want to be respectful. It's 12:30. Are we going to get booted out of this group in a second?
Amanda sent a message that we're going to be joining them in a couple of minutes. So just
Okay, I've taken a bunch of notes here. I mean, maybe just to give us a quick chance to review them. And I think the first two questions, I just basically typed up what everyone said and synthesized it in some bullets. I'm happy to post it in here. Maybe to speak through the third item, what do you think would improve? I captured more ways to contact staff and report issues, such as phone app, speed dial on phone, better maps with recommended routes, more detail on where facilities, including water fountains, are, more friendly staff available to help visitors, bells, especially for cyclists, dispersion of visitors through either more trails or educating users to the different trails that are available to them. Did I miss anything? Yeah, Gabrielle.
Can you add better trail names, like prehistoric names?
Oh, yeah.
Very cool. What do you mean by better? Just or you want something?
Like, you know how in Coyote Hills, it's like a prehistoric site, and then you have some names that are what are the names? I totally forgot. Like Red Hill. Can they be more of a traditional name that's educational, that represents the history?
Oh, that's cool.
Thank you.
That's a good suggestion. There's a park just recently that they switched the name to the indigenous people who lived on the land. It's here in the Bay Area. It just happened. I have to look on the notes, but there are some that are renaming the trails in the area. So that's on point concern. Yeah.
Sort of a fun exercise too for people to be involved in. That might be something for these land banked properties.
Go hike in El Cerrito's Hillside Natural Area. We renamed a whole bunch of the trails after various indigenous peoples' connections. So we made a big effort on that.
That's cool.
Feels welcoming.
Well, okay, looks like we're going to get booted here in a minute. Maybe there'll be instruction, but should I share what I've typed up here in a document? Do you want for your notes for this, or should I send them to Lou, or?
It'd be great if you did the report back, Austin. Unless anybody here has an objection, I think Austin's done a great job. So just share. Sorry, Norm?
No objection.
No objections. Okay.
Did
I'm happy
you
to
capture?
synthesize.
Okay, sorry. Quick question. Did you capture what you said too, Austin?
I tried to.
Okay, good. Because you said a bunch of things, but you were talking and not typing. So I was.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to do two things at once. So
Okay. Thanks,
I'll try
everybody.
to get them in here real quick. Okay. Let me go through the notes and make sure I got my own notes in there. And
all right, we'll see you in the big room, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. All right.
Bye.
I think Pam and Helen and I know each other already. Kathy, would you tell us a bit about your affiliations?
Well, I am a very, very avid hiker, and I think I've hiked in every park. I think I've been on, for example, every trail in Briones, which took some doing. And I have a big interest in native plant restoration and fire abatement. I volunteer with one of the land trusts, but my main reason for being here is that I'm a dog walker and here to support the interest of dog walkers.
Great.
Okay. And let me just say, on trails, as opposed to Mary Barnsdale, who essentially represents Pido and also goes to a lot of the bayfront areas, I mainly use the inland trails, especially Morgan Territory and Black Diamond Mines and Sunol, etc.
So you don't represent the commercial dog walkers or the specific organized groups. You're just an independent dog walker?
Yeah, well, I represent dog walking as recreation.
Okay.
I did start a group called Share Our Trails, but it's not really very organized. It's mainly an email list of interested people. So I'm basically trying to organize dog walkers in the inland areas. But we're not, I can't say that they're very organized. I mean, dog walkers as a group tend to be very individualistic. People like to, after work, they walk their dogs. They really don't want to be involved in an organization. But I would say my primary interest as far as this is the inland trails, the new acquisitions, and what the rules are going to be for dogs.
So Kathy, speaking to question number one, what are your goals?
Well, my goals are to have open discussion, and in fact, the way people were talking, to have, rather than start out with with like an agenda, to actually hear each other's viewpoints. And my goal is to keep trails open for dogs, but also to improve communication. I think sometimes with better signage, they'd get better cooperation with the rules that are there. Personally, I'd like to see very clear signage that, for dog people where they shouldn't be going, like some of the new acquisitions have ponds that have red-legged frogs or whatever. And to have that clearly be marked as no-go, and then have the other areas clearly marked as okay. And then with my organization, I'm trying to communicate with dog owners why this is, to improve behavior on the part of the people.
Now, Pam, what are your goals as a hiker? You with us, Pam?
Pam looks like she's having another bio break.
Okay. How about you, Helen?
All right. My goals are to be able to enjoy nature and get exercise in the outdoors, in a way that does not harm the environment and is safe. So I'm not threatened by outside whatever. And I would like to have that available. I mean, I think other people who enjoy the out of doors should have the same access that I do.
Okay, Helen, or Pam, rather, are you back yet? She's otherwise engaged. Well, I'm a hiker at the moment because I'm between horses, and I guess my goal as a hiker is to have peaceful enjoyment of the trails, and I'll just leave it at that. So let's move on to the second question, which is, what are our issues? You want to start, Kathy?
Yeah, let someone else start.
Okay. Helen?
Okay, well, I'll say that, well, the way I defined it, anything that gets in the way of that, the enjoyment of the trail, the feeling safe on the trail, any of those things would be issues for me. And I think right now access is pretty good. I don't have a problem with access getting to trails, and I appreciate that. I think the Park District has done a very good job there. But I think where I feel slightly threatened is if I'm going down a narrow trail and there's a biker on the same trail and they're coming behind me or up the trail towards me, I feel threatened, and I have to jump off the trail and be concerned about my safety. And that for me is an issue.
Well, I'll echo that. I have been driven off narrow trails as a hiker by bikes more often than I would care to recall, and sometimes they simply can't stop themselves. Other times they are intent on blowing other people off the trail, and they yell at you and are rude and reckless. So, and there is misogyny, toxic masculinity, and ageism at foot as well. So anyway, that's my my issue. How about you, Kathy?
Yes. Well, I just actually have a experience to relate. I mean, I've certainly experienced having to step off the trail for bikers. But at one point I was hiking along in Shell Ridge in Walnut Creek, and every biker who went by would say, "Hello, on your left." And to the point that I think that they must have had an organized bike group that really encouraged that, because it was just so universal. And it's certainly not universal in the East Bay parks. But I think that there's that some of this is living in a community where some anymore, and allowance needs to be made for that. You know, not, and I'm totally not saying that, yes, they should run people off the trails, but I think that the trail use design, and then also the better communication and organization among the various user groups could go a long way to helping those experiences.
This is.
So you're
go
actually
ahead.
speaking to the third question there, Kathy. What would improve the experience, and you're saying better communication among the groups?
Yeah.
I'm writing all this down. I compulsively write, so I'm doing it.
And I would say better signage, you know, to this effect too.
I've done some hiking in the peninsula, obviously without my dog, because there's no place to walk with the dog in the peninsula, basically. And it's almost excessive. I mean, I was with a group, and some bicyclists would go by clearly under control, and I don't know exactly how fast they were going, but it didn't seem like a threat, and they would get yelled at. But I think a little mellowness on the part of everyone, and I don't mean tolerating obvious safety violations, would go a long way.
And Pam, you're still not with us.
I'm with you now. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I just had to go and get some food. Sorry.
Yeah, I hear
So,
that. Me too.
Yeah, so here are my three main points. My three main points are that we actually in our birding group and many birding groups, we actually have a code of ethics that we each adhere to, and I think it's a very good idea for trail users to adhere to a code of ethics, and as you say, for mountain bikers to adhere to a mountain bike specific code of ethics, because they go really fast. They're basically vehicular traffic on a trail. These trails were not designed to accommodate vehicular traffic. And my experience, I go on this trail near where I live every other day for exercise and bird watching combined, hiking. And the bikes go really fast. A few, like you say, bikers are accommodating and might announce as they go by. Right now, many bikers don't even go by single file. They still, if there are more than one biker, they stay two abreast. I have to get way out of the way to establish my social distance for this pandemic. Largely the bikers wear masks, and so that's good. But largely they all go very fast. I feel that because there are so many rogue trails, so much incredible damage in places where they don't need to even go. They just do it for fun. They have half donuts around oak trees, and oak trees are suffering all kinds of assaults anyway, between sudden oak death and many other challenges with the drought. And now they got bikers going around on the soil, and I don't think the bikers even understand how soil is a living system. It's like the skin on your body. They're damaging that stuff. And I don't feel like we can add more uses, add more trails until the park district gets this under control. Where I go, I've counted and taken pictures of over 40 rogue trails. Some of them are so well established, you could get a motorcycle through and around this one gate leading into the Tilden Nature Area. They should be very worried, the park managers, about what this is inviting as an unintended consequence. So those are my main concerns. And then, as I said, we really should establish assumptions here. Do we all agree and assume that any trail has an impact to the habitat values? We should all agree and state that we all want to avoid and minimize those impacts. And thirdly, we all want to agree that the highest value and use for these areas is when the habitat is high function with ecosystem services, not just so we can enjoy it, but because this is one of the best nature-based solutions to our climate crisis for things like carbon sequestration. People forget that we're not just out there enjoying the park. This is what we depend on. This is how we survive. This is where our clean water, clean soil, and clean air come from.
So could you say one of your goals, Pam, as a hiker is to improve the parks as part of the solution to global climate change?
Not as a hiker, but as someone who supports land use management and the policies and priorities and the mission of the park district. When I go as a hiker, I consider it a privilege, and I want to behave under a code of ethics where my impact represents my efforts to avoid and minimize damage to that trail.
Okay, thank you.
And that if there is damage to the trail, that I will forego using that trail until the park district gets it restored. I won't put up a fight. I'll say, fix that trail. I'll go somewhere else until it's better. And everyone, I think, will hopefully agree to that. Why wouldn't we agree to that?
I would like to address that. And let me just say, in so many ways, I agree with that. You have to understand I'm an anti-soil compaction warrior. And I laugh or cry with other people who share my interests that the people think a tree is like a piece of furniture. And as you were saying, they just make donuts in the soil without having any sense whatsoever of what soil is. And I completely agree with that. But these are parks, they're open to the public. Even areas that aren't open to the public, people see open space and they go and they walk there without any contact, without any education about it, without any contact with organizations. And bicycling is incredibly popular among young people, just incredibly so. As a doctor, there's no of those golfing doctors anymore. They're all retired. All the young doctors, they ride their bikes. I mean, it's a very popular thing, and it's not like people get oriented before they go to the parks. They just go. And so we need to deal realistically with people's desires. And I don't mean to cave into every desire, but there's a lot of young people out there who want to ride their bike fast. And I think the point of this is to funnel that into places that is appropriate for it and to keep it away from places that it's really inappropriate for.
And we just got a 5-minute warning from Amanda. And which of us should present the group's conclusions?
I vote for you, Amelia.
Well, yeah, Amelia, you're on top of it.
Well, that's
Go for it.
I'll do my best to accurately do that. I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm less of an environmentalist than Pam and Kathy, and less familiar with these impacts, but I'll try to give it my best shot. One thing that has not come up yet is the question of e-bikes, and for question 3, what would improve the experience? I think a code of ethics, yeah. Specific training. I think that e-bikes should require a permit and training like the DMV gives drivers before they put these motorized bikes on the trails.
Right.
I hate to disagree, but let me just say, I don't think a code of ethics is realistic. This is not even like the East Bay Mudlands where, I think the main purpose of the permit they have you send away for is that they know they've sent you the rules. How can there be a code of ethics when the people just, live near a park or see a park, they park their car, or they take their bike and they just go? So as much as I might support that in theory, I think in reality, when you make a summation of that, don't make it sound like it was entirely unanimous that this is something we can aim for, because as much as I might like to, I don't think we can aim for it.
Yeah, I would like to reiterate that I think adequate signage about the trail priorities, who gets to pass who, and some kind of little descriptive thing before you go on trails about narrow trails and safety considerations and stuff like that. I think that I would like to see that. I think that could help address the situation by educating the public.
Okay, I'm gonna try to get my notes here together.
I think that, the code of ethics idea could be contained in the signage. It doesn't have to be called code of ethics, but it could encourage behavior that would meet with that meets a code of ethics.
This is Pam again. Just know that where people have signed a code of ethics, the behavior got a lot better, a lot better. It's a small thing, and it's actually easy to do for people to say, when you join us and share time on this trail, you agree to abide by rules of respect and consideration. By consideration for the rules, you'll do your best to adhere. It's very simple, just simple thing like that. You'd be surprised. It was done in Boulder. You'd be surprised how effective it is.
But Boulder is a different situation. I've been in Boulder a lot. It's more like you could have that at Point Isabel, where it's a finite area and people are aware they're entering it, And that, I think that would be a great idea. But for these hundreds of thousands of acres of land, people don't even know if they're in that Joaquin Miller isn't part of the East Bay Regional Parks. I think it depends on the location and the situation.
Don't get me started on Joaquin Miller Park. I'm there every weekend. You know, it's Wild West. And what really kills me is when some of the bicyclists say, "Oh, Joaquin Miller is a paradigm of situations where the users all are happy together." I'm like, no, it's a paradigm of situations where the bicyclists have driven out the hikers and the equestrians. I don't know what it's like for dog walkers there, but Redwood is so attractive to dog walkers. I don't really see a lot of large commercial dog walking groups.
Well, it's officially, Joaquin Miller is officially on leash only, although it's
say again, it's
I say all of Joaquin Miller is on leash only, but you might not know it by if you went there. But well, I mean, for years, and I live in Oakland, and you can see I'm really involved in all this. For years, I didn't realize where the boundaries between Joaquin Miller and Redwood were, and which rules were which. And I'm a person who would read and sign the rules.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think this has been an interesting discussion. And Amelia, do you think you've got what you need there for report back?
Would you like me to reiterate it? We might get just blown back into the main group.
Okay. Okay.
So our goals are to have an open discussion amongst the different user groups, and as far as hikers go, it gets a little bit blurry as to what's a goal and what's a mitigation, but we're pleased with the access and the general state of trail maintenance in the park district. We have a goal of environmental protection, and moving on to our issues, there's two general issues that we have. One is being blown off the trail by speeding bicyclists, varying degrees of aggression. In some cases, like on Shell Ridge, people riding bicycles have proven very polite, but many other situations on steeper, narrow trails where we've had to jump off the trail for our lives. The second quality of issue is environmental destruction. Some trails have been badly eroded by bicyclists doing donuts or creating compacted earth, bootleg trails, and the mitigations that we are looking for is that what would improve our experience. Some people think that a code of ethics that different user groups are responsible for signing. In the case of e-bikes, some of us feel that permitting and insurance and a training program is going to be required, and the trail restoration. We should part of the code of ethics.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? I think you've summed that up really well, except it's going to stop in 15 seconds. Let me just say, I don't think you've reflected the degree to which I'm in favor of the recreation. And I think even if we were not in favor of the recreation, it's a reality that there's a huge demand for it.
When you say recreation, you mean bikes?
Bikes and dogs and horses.
Okay.
Great, perfect. Other than that, perfect summation. It's going to close.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we leave. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Never seen it happen. And Fernandez is a popular site for mountain biking, but the collaborative use out on that property is significant. But we are also mindful that we don't want it to become a mecca. A lot of people come over from Carquinez Hills, because there are so many mountain bikers there on Park District properties, that they find a better balance at Fernandez across the road. I mean, maybe I should shut my mouth. I mean, generally I should, but not put it on the map, not have it be part of it, so that it retains its balance.
Well, Linus, I'm going to hike out there this weekend, so I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah, please.
Let's take
Well,
our.
We're supposed to be looking at goals of hikers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's
And
get
of
on
course,
to
they're
that.
all different. But one of the goals, from my perspective at 87, is
You're a fit, fantastic 87, I'll tell you.
no, that's not the point. The point is that I graduated from, climbing up and down and having a wonderful time to, 2 knees that aren't any good. And so one of the things that some hikers are looking for is a reasonable trail that is safe. And we don't have to always be looking out for somebody. And it's wide enough for 2 of us at least, because a lot of us at this age don't hike very far, particularly on the non-paved trails, without somebody along, just for, that's a safety point.
Sure.
So it seems to me that one of the goals of hikers, some of the hikers, is that some trails near enough that are accessible enough that you don't have to drive for 20 miles are geared toward safety and ease of the older population.
I think that's a really important point.
Well, we like to socialize, people like to talk to each other, and we'd prefer not to be on single file trails. If we can be 2, adjacent to each other, 2 in pairs, we like that much better than single trail, just because when we talk, we have to talk either ahead of us or behind us, and that makes it a little bit difficult. So there's a lot of socialization in hiking groups, a lot of socialization, which we enjoy.
Devin, I think that's a really important point, if you don't mind my just, underlining it as I might, is that to Mimi's point, when you get into hikers' preferences and so forth, a lot of people, it's like, I don't want to be disturbed. There's a spiritual formation to it, all of this. And as if somebody on a mountain bike isn't having spiritual formation. And I think those things are really pitting one against the other and judgmental in ways that aren't productive. But actually speaking to an age demographic where safety and socialization and all of those things are specific, and saying, that these are a user group, a taxpayer group, a demographic, so forth, that we have some obligation to address, is different than sort of the values argument that goes on otherwise. I think that's a really, I think, who wouldn't applaud the notion of saying, we have trails that are specifically designed for people to stay safe, undisturbed, if they're more senior age demographic, that they're not going to have to be over concerned. That's one way of maybe, putting a stake into the ground about how a trail could be segregated just for hikers.
Yeah. I don't know who is on the call from the 925 area code. Who are you?
Me.
Soviets.
That's me, Kevin.
Oh, that's Mimi dialed in instead of off.
Okay. So it's just.
I don't know how to get in otherwise.
Yeah.
Okay. So
somebody's got to sit down and teach me one of these days.
That's why you've got a little bit of an echo, Mimi.
I got you. Okay. So it's just, I just didn't want to leave someone aside. So it's just the 3 of us. Okay. So.
A question, Devin.
Yeah.
In his presentation, Sean mentioned that there are illegal trails on some of the hills, and he showed a photograph of some illegal trails. Who's making these illegal trails?
Actually, Linus, maybe you can answer. Do you suffer from this?
Runners want to run straight up a hill for conditioning. Bikers, because they want to go straight down a hill for speed and sort of extreme. But it's typically people that are willing to be in a more extreme condition. Most people want to use a switchback, not go straight up and down. But you can see the straight up and downs. I mean, the erosion, it's the worst trail in the world. but it's runners and bikers, and we have had that conversation with bikers. There's an old fire road out on Fernandez, and they say, well, we'd like that road to have a switchback here and this, that, and the other, and just said, if you guys want to come up with $500,000 to undertake the biological opinion and sequence, so forth, we may consider amending that trail, but otherwise the ranch road that exists there is what you get.
Yes.
So even bikers, sometimes it's like, this is a little too steep, but it's those social trails are typically, those bootleg trails are people that want extreme kinds of, or they want to get to the top of a hill and they don't know how else to do it. Instead of well-constructed trail, it's like, oh, let's just go to the top of that hill. And it begins to be a fait accompli straight up.
Nobody has mentioned runners.
Yeah,
they're a problem in the park.
No, no, because they can slow down more easily perhaps than something else, but they do like trails that are, straight up and down sometimes. And Ocklonis Ridge is a good example. We've tried over and over and over again to get people to quit going up and down this old social trail that's just a straight slope up. But they want to be out there, and it's close in to where people live, so that's their conditioning. It's their conditioning spot. And no matter what we do, it's like, no, I want to run straight up that hill.
So Linus, does it make sense to have trails just for cyclists? Would that make sense? Would that be practical? Because I don't think the park district would have the resources, the personnel to monitor that.
This goes to something else that I think Brian was talking about. If we start saying or others were concerned about, there's a habitat impact to building trail. So if you've got folks all sort of going to the same place, but you're building, 2 trails or 3 trails to get there, you're just having that much more impact on the habitat values that we're charged with maintaining and enhancing.
Yeah.
So it's better when I think there's a natural delineation, as we were talking about, if it has steps and topography that, sort of naturally precludes mountain bikes and perhaps even equestrians. That might be an easier way of delineating, this trail is really more for walking, hiking than. That's the other thing, is I think we should be talking about walking. Not everybody's a hiker. To Mimi's point, some people just need a flat out and back.
Yes. Well,
we have that.
Is the main issue here about cyclists using narrow trails? Is that the main issue behind this whole group, Devin?
No, there's so many competing interests. That is a conflict, but that is not the only conflict. As Sean was mentioning, we just haven't.
As a hiker, you're having horses on the trail, walkers on the trail, dogs on the trail. That's fine with us. It's just the cyclists that are the issue.
Well, dogs can be a real issue for a lot of people too. I mean, you pick your poison, Ian. To Devin's point, there's a little bit of back and forth and friction about all of these issues. It's how do people accommodate and get along?
But what if the park district puts up on multi-use trails signs that say, danger, mountain bikes use this trail? I mean, part of it is education, not only in signage so that people know what to expect, but, education of the bicyclists warning system. When I can't hike the hills anymore, I hike the Moraga Trail. And there are some bicyclists that are just fine. Others have belts. But some of us, besides bad knees, have bad hearing. And you can't always hear the bell. The most effective is somebody yelling. And I haven't seen anything on signs or park district material that says if you're riding a bicycle on a multi-use trail, yell.
Okay, I'm gonna note it down. Yeah. So we're about to be called back to the larger group. Give me some brainstorm ideas about what would improve trail user experience. Right now, I've just heard from Mimi, signage and education. What are some of the other ideas I can share with the larger group?
Good signage. When you come to a trail divide, trail junction, have good signage. Usually the signage is very good in your parks, but
yeah,
sometimes when you come to an intersection, sometimes you're not quite sure We have got lost sometimes.
Yeah.
Good signage.
You know, you may want to consider, Devin, the notion of the park district adopting some sort of mobile technology for people to also, you know, wayfinding on a smartphone and the like, not just as an idea to throw in, just in as much as you're tabulating them.
Yeah, we actually we're working with some sort of software developer on exactly that.
Yeah, that could be helpful with signage as well.
So
I don't know how people would take to, like, one day a week, no bicycles on certain trails. And I would think those trails are the narrowest, the best for contemplative walking, that sort of thing.
You have to monitor that. You don't have the personnel to monitor that, do you?
Devin, just to throw it out, I mean, to Ian and Mimi's conversation there, is, you know, and it's probably totally impractical, but is as the park district up in Tilden might rent out some picnic tables or whatever, a certain grove for a certain party, is there some system that could be devised where mountain bikers could, you know, reserve a trail system for a day or something like that to just kind of go nuts? But, you know, you can't do it every day all the time as individuals, that kind of thing.
What an interesting idea. I've never heard that before, about reserving a trail system sort of in advance and, you know, and allowing a larger group of bicyclists to be on the trails so that they aren't, they don't want to be in conflict, obviously, either.
Mm-mm.
I'm going to mention that to the larger group. Okay, any last thoughts before we go back?
Yeah, for old people too.
Yeah.
Couldn't we? I mean, one certain trail once a week, you know, that on, you know, Monday, certainly not the weekend, but on Monday or something, that there won't be any bicycles.
Yeah, it's like you know, senior shopping at Lenardi's or whatever, you know, before 10 a.m.
Yeah.
You don't have to compete with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, interesting.
But see, we, as a hiking club, we print 6-month schedules from January through June, July through December. And so we'd have to know ahead of time if there were certain trails off limits on certain days. So we'd have to know that way ahead of time.
Yeah, that's true. There's some practical issues. And this may be against, you know, some park district philosophy that I, as a newbie, I've only been here 2 years, I don't know anything about, but I think we're definitely open to considering it. That's what we want this group to do, is generate these interesting ideas.
Yeah, there may be Amelia saying, wrap up the session.
Well, Devin, we really appreciate your doing this. I mean, it's not an easy thing to balance amongst all these people, and you guys are coordinating it well. And thank you for facilitating. Really appreciate it.
Good. Well, thank you.
This has been a good meeting today.
Oh, good. I'm glad you think so.
Well, we really enjoy hiking in the East Bay Regional Park District parks. I mean, really, it's a pleasure to hike in your parks. It really is.
Oh, thank you.
We feel it's a privilege. It really is a privilege to be able to do this.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you.
Sure. It's a privilege. Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah,
Breakout room.
Here we go.
Okay, we're going to say goodbye.
So I have to press that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.